Hey guys, Scott here. Today I can't do it anymore. Nope. All right, it's better. Today I want to talk about 2v8 and how it just got extended again. I feel like at this point, since it gets extended every single time they add it, they might as well just add 2v8 on their schedule 1 week longer than the rest of the events because we know it's going to get extended every time. Now, the reason that they would extend it, it obviously must be doing well statistically. That's the only reason that they would do that. If they could see it was harming the player count or anything like that, they would not extend it. And they did a survey about it recently too. It must be getting more positive reception than negative. It's the only reason that they would extend it. And to be fair, it is super fun. Like, when I've been talking about 2v8 since years before they added it. I said it would be insanely fun, and they added it, and it's insanely fun. The problem is, like I said, I made a video about this like a year ago where it's kind of too fun. It's too fun in the sense that it just kind of ruins everything else that's not 2v8. And that's kind of a side effect I didn't really foresee when being so excited about this. So I figured everything else would still be fine, but no. 2v8 is sort of an all-consuming thing where you kind of like are stuck just doing that because the regular queue times get so out of whack as well that it just becomes harmful. And I want to talk about why that's the case because it's kind of fascinating to me. Because in theory, if the queue times were absolutely horrendous for killer in 2v8, you would think, oh, well, then they must be better in 1v4 because all the killers are doing this new exciting thing. They can finally play with their friends. Everyone that's a killer player is now playing 2v8, so they can do that. So you think, oh, let me go to 1v4. It's going to be quick, except it's not. It's still 10 times worse. And when we can look at the queue times right now on Dead by Q, this is not 100% accurate, but we see the actual 2v8 queue times ranging from 18 to 27 minutes, which is obviously horrendous for everybody. And then even in the regular killer mode, just 1v4, it's like 5 to 8 minutes, which is, you know, considering most of my time playing Dead by Daylight over the past 8 years, killer queues are usually about 10 to 15 seconds. Obviously, there are some exceptions on new killer releases and things like that, but they're usually, or on new Survivor releases, sorry, but there are usually, you know, it's a very short time because overall, killer is seen as the more stressful role, and you are less incentivized, in my opinion, to play killer, especially since they removed things like barbecue and chili a long time ago. You're sort of less incentivized to play killer because it's a more stressful role, even if it might not be harder. Like, even if I win more as killer compared to survivor, it still requires more of my brain, so it's more stressful, and I think most people play this game very chill and laid back, kind of like almost a party game, so I think that's why I would consider killer to be the more stressful and less incentivized role. But we have this scenario here where the queue times are still terrible in 1v4, and I'm always just scratching my brain trying to figure out why that's the case. So let's just go over actual 2v8. Why would people be drawn to 2v8? Well, it's just fun. It's just a very casual, laid-back version of Dead by Daylight. New players don't have to worry about getting 70,000 perks. New killers don't have to worry about getting the correct meta build from the shrine or buying whatever they need to get it. Everyone just kind of is on the same playing field, which equalizes a lot. And I think something a lot of people, especially content creators, have to realize is that most people are not watching this video. Most people are not even watching Otz's videos or anything like that. Most people don't know what the meta is. They don't care. They play this game an hour every other day, and that's the majority of the player base. And for these people, 2v8 is the perfect casual, laid back, I don't need a specific build or anything, don't need to do research. You just dick around, do some chases, go to the next one. It's really a lot of what is the condensed fun of Dead by Daylight boiled down to this chaotic mode that has far less stress, in my opinion. For survivors, there's plenty of incentive to play in 2v8. Obviously, the Q bonus being 5 times multiplier is insane. That's probably the biggest one. But there's also things like no flavor of the month meta annoying things like ghoul or clown and things like that. A lot of the things that people don't like going against are not there. Really, the most annoying thing you have to deal with in 2v8 is like a Legion. Especially if it's comboed with an Oni, like a Legion Oni combo, that can be a nightmare. Now, for killer, the incentives are, well, you get to play with a friend. That's just obviously awesome. It's the main drawing force to the entire mode. Playing killer with somebody else is amazing. You can now finally blame your teammate instead of having only yourself to blame. Therefore, you just get your feelings hurt and your ego gets bruised whenever you lose. Now you can say the other guy sucks. It's wonderful. So those are like the major upsides. But the downsides for Survivor are, well, you still have to deal with a couple of annoying things like, you know, Legion and Oni, but for the most part, I feel like downsides for Survivor are far less. I do think survivors win more in 2v8. Playing killer in 2v8, even when I was playing with friends that are extremely good at the game, better than me even, we were still getting down to like 1 gen close to it. Like, the games felt way, way closer for me and another friend that's basically comp level. So I can't imagine how the casual player base is doing here. It's got to be fucking rough. So I would have to assume that Killer is harder in 2v8. However, it's kind of countered by the fact you get to play with your friends. So even though you might be losing more, you're having probably more fun because you can do silly shit. However, the major downside to Killer is the queue times. The queue times are unbearable. They were like 15 minutes last time, and now they're, like I said, they're 20 minutes. And that is a little mitigated by the fact that they have added the play while you wait system, which I have to admit, after the first day of hiccups, works very well. It's actually a perfectly functioning system, which is insane because it's kind of complicated to do that, and they just nailed it. So that is really nice, and I'm happy to see that. And it does allow you to play as you wait, but if you don't want to play Survivor, there's just nothing really for you there except pure downside. So if you're not someone that really ever touches Survivor, one, I think you should, because if you have biased opinions to only one side, your opinion is not going to be worth very much in this community, at least. But two, it's just going to result in you having to do something that you just don't really want to do, and you now have to wait even longer. So that is an unintended downside of the play while you wait system. Obviously, I think for most people, this is a good thing. I think this is an overall net positive for the mode, because being able to just do something instead of nothing is better. But for the most part, as Killer, the main downside is you still have to worry about massive, massive queue times. So here is the main dilemma and the main question of what I really kind of want to discuss here. If this all is the case, why are 1v4 killer queues still so bad? What this means is it's not like the mode brings in additional players. What the mode does is it shifts the ratio of players in a very harmful, detrimental way. There's this kind of homeostasis that normally occurs in the game where there's a 4-to-1 ratio of survivors to killer. And when we have 2v8, that gets completely disrupted. And so if we have like 100 players, and there's usually 20 killers and, 80 survivors for like 2v8 or whatever, something like that. Now we're probably looking at more like a 50-50, but that affects both modes as well. And I think one of the main incentives there is the survivor blood point incentive is just so high in 2v8 that all of the survivors want to go play in that mode. So it's not even that there's not enough killers or there's too many killers in 1v4. It's that most survivors are incentivized to go into the 2v8 mode. So in order to fix this issue for 1v4, you would have to cut the survivor incentive bonus a lot in order to make killer queues in 1v4 a lot better. But in doing that, you would make killer queues in 2v8 be even longer. It would be like 35 minutes then. So it seems like it's almost an impossible scenario to fix. And normally this wouldn't be too bad if it was only a week or two at a time, fine. But they keep fucking extending it to where it's like almost a month of this shit. And it's on the back of basically 5 months straight of killer queues being terrible. The only time we had killer queues not terrible was like 4 or 5 days after the Walking Dead release happened. My killer queues were like 30 seconds there, and it was so nice because people wanted to try the new perks, play as Rick Michonne and Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus, and so that was nice for a very short time. But then that quickly dwindled off, and then 2v8 just chopped its head off again. But pretty much since the Ghoul came out, killer queues have been terrible. That's also another topic I kind of want to briefly go over here. Killer queues have been so bad since the Ghoul has come out, only very briefly being better when The Walking Dead hit. But we've had the Ghoul into Springtrap into 2v8, and it paints this picture that this is just a theory of mine, but you know how people say that killer is it's impossible, it's so stressful. It's a miserable experience, killer's never been worse, blah, 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 blah. To me, that can't be true for a majority of the player base. If killer queues, even without 2v8, are 4 or 5 minutes at a time, the killer cannot possibly be as bad as people are saying it is. Because even if there's a new shiny toy like the Ghoul or something like that, or a new shiny toy like Springtrap, who's not even that good, there is no way people would subject themselves to that much torture and that much misery if it was as bad as people say it is. The truth is, Dead by Daylight has a killer excess problem. There are too many people playing killer and there are not enough people playing survivor, which really would indicate that killer can't be as bad as people are saying it is. Again, this is just something I'm making an inference based off of queue times and data. I'm sure there's more that goes into it there, but it is sitting in the back of my mind that people are saying killer is this impossible, miserable experience, and yet you gotta wait 50 times as long to play that mode, which means there's way too many people doing it, which means it cannot be that bad. Again, 2v8 throws this out of the water because then there's, incentives and things like that that's completely different. But I do think, even if it's just as sole of a reason as people hate the ghoul and so more people are playing as killer so they don't have to go against the ghoul, but if they do that and there's a constant trend of things that are miserable to go against, like then Clown comes out and then there's more of a reason to not play Survivor, if we just keep having a trend of Survivor having miserable things to go against, so much so that more people are just playing killer to avoid it, well, that doesn't mean that's a quick meta. This has been almost half a year. That's just the way the game is shaping up at this point. So I don't really know what you do to fix that. I think staggering releases is a massive issue. I don't think they should just have a killer-only chapter and a survivor-only chapter. They really need to go back to doing the both. Just having a killer and a survivor coming out at the same time. I think it's way too harmful to the game's queue times and overall the game's health if they just stagger them by doing half and half each. So we're going to be getting back to the original way they used to do it soon. Back in the day, if you only got a killer or you only got a survivor, it was called a paragraph. But they haven't even called them now. They're just still calling them chapters, even when it's just Springtrap or even when it's just the survivors from Walking Dead. So I do think we need to really focus in on just going back to the standard, because when you stagger the releases like that, it really, really harms the queue times. And I think that is overall very bad for the game. So even if I wasn't a content creator, I still don't want to wait 5 times longer to play the game. It's just bad for everybody. So I think that would really help with that. As a content creator, and I can speak on behalf of probably all of my content creator friends, we are all internally going, fuck, every time they do 2v8 extensions, because it's almost unplayable for us. Like we have to wait in queue for, 20 something minutes, or play a role that people don't want to watch us play, or just do something else that people don't want to watch us do. It fucking sucks for streamers, but again, we're 0.1% of the player base, so not super relevant to anything. This is my channel, so I'm going to dedicate the past 20 seconds to ranting about that. This is why in the past couple of weeks, I've just been playing like Resident Evil games. I just beat Resident Evil 1 on stream. I just did 5 on stream. I've been doing the entire Resident Evil series, and it's been nice and stuff like that. But I'm kind of sitting there going, okay, let me play the game now. So overall, fuck.